Hey, good morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, so you know what that means. It's time for the Patriot Pulse podcast. And of course, we're simulcasting to Two Guys Drinking Coffee as well. So wherever you find us, also on X and Rumble, Live, Kick, and Twitch. So you may be finding us live anywhere. But first, I want to say thank you to the United States Air Force Band for providing that national anthem that we use every week. I've come to like starting our podcast with that because we kind of rebranded ourselves as a patriot group, and it just seems to fit. So, good morning. It is October 15th. This is episode 27 of the Patriot Pulse and 231 of Two Guys Drinking Coffee. And because it is the third Wednesday of the month, it is Econ 101 with Jim M. And so we got not only Fred on here with us, but we got Jim back for his monthly update of everything econ, everything finance, all the things that we need to know that we probably don't see. So, gentlemen, good morning. How are you all doing today?
Doing well.
Very good, thank you.
All righty.
I am blessed.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So, as we said, this is the third Wednesday of the month, and it's time that Jim is back on. I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that when we have Jim on, I get an education on the economy because this is just something that just makes my head hurt. So I need somebody to kind of keep me abreast of that. And Jim has been doing that for me for multiple years now. But the government's manipulation of the economy, the world of digital currency, and all things that we need are seem to be in such jeopardy, including that stuff we have in our wallet called money that really is kind of monopoly money, but that's another subject altogether. But there's a lot of things going on in the world and with money and economy, and Jim keeps his finger on the pulse of it all. We are happy to have him here with us each month to fill us in. And based on the notes that Jim gave me, we have about 4 hours of material to try to get through. So we probably should get started. But again, a little housekeeping. We are shadow banned. You know that. We've been saying that for 4 years. Regardless of the platform that you are watching us on, please click like or share or subscribe, whatever that happens to be, and help us overcome the algorithms. So, Jim, you had an intro prepared with your notes that you sent me. So I just want you to lead off with that and get right into the material that you have.
Okay. So in an effort to save some time, well, let me first off, thanks for letting me be on here again every month. So it's a joy to be here, a pleasure to be here. And there is lots going on, James. You mentioned you get like a headache. This is confusing. It's meant to be that way. That way people don't pay attention to it. That way people go watch a Netflix movie instead to actually watch what's really going on. So hopefully I can add some clarity to it all and, help people out a little bit. For those who have been paying attention, you're probably exhausted with everything that is actually happening. And if you have not been, may I encourage you to pay attention. The thing, and I do a show Tuesday nights, not a show, a class. And so there's a website too with Discerning the Times. Jim, do you have that page that you can just pull up real fast, screen share?
Well, yeah, I've got the URL for your Facebook page there.
That's good enough. I'll do post references. So people want to, my saying, don't believe a word I say, do your own research. But if you want to see what I'm seeing, that's where you can find it. Okay.
And as Jim, as you want, I've got all the references there, and I've got that page ready to bring up as a screen share. So you just tell me when and where, and I'll bring it up. Okay.
Okay. I'll try to just have a few most important ones. That way we're not wasting a lot of time flipping back and forth. But okay. So my theme for today is this it? Okay. It's a big question mark. It's short phrase, big question mark. Jim, we've talked about this for a long time. Is this it? Well, things happened in the last week, over the weekend, that makes you wonder, maybe it is. Okay.
What?
There's a crisis
Yeah.
in Europe right now that's going down that 99.9% of Americans have absolutely no clue about. But if you placed your bets in the right order, you're a very happy camper today. And if you didn't, well, you missed out on a great opportunity. But let me start off with this. Yesterday or Monday morning, Trump tweeted out, everything will be all right. My first thoughts were Bob Marley. And so I pulled that up and listened to Everything Will Be All Right. However, I also thought about that movie 2012 with that Do Not Panic scene. We played it a few times on the show. You don't have to pull any of this up, James.
Well, I'll tell you. Nope, I don't. I don't have that in my. I archived that, so I'm sorry, I can't bring that one up.
Yeah, it's a great scene where the governor of California is saying, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." And I can't think of the actor's name, but he comes by and he says, "Don't trust a word they say. He's an actor. When they tell you everything's okay, that's when you run for the hills." That sort of thing. And then, our good buddy Greg Manarino really just put out a couple of things. In fact, he did one. He said, "It's time to hunker down." So he's thinking we're getting close. A nice report came out. This would be post 1168 for those that wish to read it. Global debt has now hit $338 trillion. We've always talked about the United States, which, by the way, is almost at 38 trillion, but globally it's 338 trillion. And we talked about a couple of months ago the Genius Act, about how that's supposed to get people to buy U.S. debt into stable coins. So the question, which is a big Ponzi scheme in my mind. So the question is this it? And then if you want to go into a little bit of revelation, since we used to talk about that a lot, if you're paying attention to the Middle East, quote unquote, another peace treaty has been signed or is trying to be put into place. Is that going to work? Is it not going to work? I don't know. Only the future, only God knows that. But in that peace agreement, I found something very fascinating. And it's in I have to pull it up. It's image 1165 for folks that are interested. It says, we will form a technocratic, apolitical government organization to oversee Gaza, headed by Donald Trump and with other folks like Tony Blair coming on board. You know me, I've been concerned about this technocracy for about a year for sure at this point. I've never seen, like, the U.S. Constitution doesn't say we're forming a technocracy. The U.S. Constitution says, we the people are forming a republic. We have to keep in mind the technocrats have clearly stated, and Peter Thiel, I think in particular, stated that our beliefs would never be accepted by the people. So we need to form a technocratic government to put it through. So, and when we look at all the crypto laws, the Genius Act, and everything else, it looks like the United States is also moving in this direction. But for the first time in history, it's actually in a document. Now, not for us, for Gazans. But so it reminded me of Revelation when they say peace and safety, a sudden destruction come upon them. So I don't know. Is this it? Some would say, yes, we are. We have been in it, I would say, since 2020 for sure, but now it's accelerating. And this last week or two events, which kind of reported on back months ago, predictions have now become reality. Conspiracy theories have again become reality. So let's start to get into what actually happened, because everyone's probably saying, well, what the heck happened on Friday? So on Thursday, it started on Thursday. The most recent surface level visible stuff, the deeper stuff was starting about 2 weeks ago. And we'll get into that later in the show. So there's your cliffhanger for you to stick around. So China on like Thursday, and then definitely by Friday, it was coming out, announced that they were going to put a ban or make it much more difficult for the United States and even the world to get rare earth minerals.
Mhm.
Now, most people don't really know much about rare earth minerals, but if you're using technology, if you're watching this broadcast right now, your laptop, the cell phone systems, the internet, everything uses rare earth minerals.
Absolutely.
Our guided missile systems use rare earth minerals. In fact, a post came out that said 1151 says that 78% of our military relies on rare earth minerals.
Anything that's electronics.
Exactly.
Right. Everything.
And depending on the numbers that you use, the numbers are anywhere from 70 to 90% are controlled by China. And that's just not the actual minerals, because it came up in a discussion yesterday that China controls 70% of the rare earth minerals, but they control 90% of the production process, the refining process. So even if another country had the rare earth minerals, which would only be 30% of the countries, all that still has to, all but 10% still has to run through China to get processed. So China has a huge monopoly. The big question is, why did we ever give it to them in the first place? But that's a whole other topic.
Well, I do have a theory on this, and maybe you know this, Jim, for a fact. But my theory is that the processing of these rare earth minerals are very hazardous, or hazardous to the environment, hazardous to people. Where in China they have no regard for that whatsoever. So it would make sense that they just do whatever they need to do to create this material, where we have deposits of rare earth minerals in our own country, but to get them out of the ground, you're talking big big surface mines, and again, processing them probably would not fly well with the EPA. My thoughts, my theory only.
Yeah, you know what?
Getting people from their homes too.
What's
a lot
that?
A lot of these minerals they're finding in the U.S. are in places where people live. That's why you have these random fires sometimes.
Okay, so I guess the question would be, and this is a whole other topic. Maybe we shipped them to this process to China because we wanted to protect the environment. Whatever the reason, we just gave away potentially our national security. So that was the trade-off. So if we lose a war with China,
wasn't that a big part of what Trump was wanting to do?
That's another. What's that?
Wasn't that a big part of the thing he talked about in the campaign, is we rely on China for too many computer parts and stuff that we needed to start building in the U.S. He talked about when he was running the president about that, and that was part of the thing, wanting to rebuild our ability to build these things that we've been relying on them to do.
Oh yeah, I mean that's part of it. Bring the jobs back, but to do that, we're also going to do we have to sacrifice the environment to do so?
Well, what does it take?
But hey, we're off on a different topic here. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Going back on track.
Yeah. So in retaliation, Trump, which I found this interesting. This is the first time that I can recall in a big way that China initiated this type of threatening action. Typically, it was a tweet from the president saying, well, we'll slap you with a tariff or whatever. This time, out of the blue, China sent this out. So I thought that was kind of an interesting change in things. Like the dynamics have changed. And Trump was on the defensive this time, as opposed to on the offensive. And so he tweeted back out, well, we'll slap them with 100% tariff on all their goods coming into this country, which would make it now the tariffs would be about 130% if that happens. That would happen on November 1st. So what transpired? There was a massive sell-off in the stock market that plummeted 900 points. Cryptos like Bitcoin, they took a huge hit as well. Bitcoin went from 125,000 down to 102,000. It's recovered some of that since then. And so over the weekend, everyone's wondering what the heck is going to happen come Monday morning. Also, in this whole process, just as an FYI, post 11:30, China bans iron ore purchases from Australia using the US dollar. So they're deleveraging. They're continuing to deleverage away from the U.S. dollar. And then this next one is a big one. Post 1131, India has been buying oil from Russia, mainly because they're right next door to each other. Why wouldn't they? It's like us buying oil from Canada. Why wouldn't we?
Jim, let me interrupt you here. I want to do a screen share and let people see when you're referencing the post numbers and so on. Let me just bring that up. So I'm basically at Discerning the Times Facebook page, and I am on the one from last week, right? Episode 11.
Episode 11.
All right. And then if you go into the comments, well, excuse me a second here. If I go into the comments
and then scroll down and then click on the comments down below. And then on the left-hand side.
Okay, there's the comments.
All right. Left-hand side right there, do newest.
Do newest. And then you can scroll down through here.
Yes.
So you see they're all numbered there, everybody. I'm doing this for the benefit of our viewers here. They're all numbered. So technically, if you want to follow along with Jim on his post, bring this up in another tab and follow along with him. So sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, that's fine. And the first number, like 11, means the episode number, and then the second number is whatever the post number is. So in India, if you recall, India gets oil from Russia, and we made the thing where we don't want people buying oil from Russia, and so the tweet, I guess the tweet went out that anyone who buys oil from Russia will hit them with 100% tariff. In some cases, it was going to be a 500% tariff, that sort of thing. And so that went out to India. And, to try to make sure India doesn't buy oil from Russia. So what was the end result of that? Well, India just announced that, they're going to continue to buy oil from Russia, and they're not going to use the U.S. dollar anymore to do so. So not only did we not discourage India from buying Russian oil, but we also encouraged them to stop using the U.S. dollar.
All right, Jim, for the benefit of me and our viewers that might be a little fuzzy on the U.S., the petrodollar, is it basically just an agreed upon thing through different governments and entities that they'll only use the U.S. dollar? I mean, how have we in the past forced them to use the U.S. dollar?
Okay. In the past, so this all goes back to Bretton Woods, which took place in like 1945, might have been 44. The World War II was still happening, but the end result was known. The Allies were going to win. And so the leaders like Roosevelt, Stalin, Churchill got together in Bretton Woods, actually New Hampshire, and sat down and said, okay, the war's winding down. I mean, there was still lots of people dying and everything, but they were looking past the war at this point and saying, how are we going to rebuild the world economy? What are we going to do? How's this going to work? Well, at that time, the United States had the biggest economy in the world. We had the biggest military in the world. We had the greatest manufacturing production ever seen. Our money was also backed by gold. And so the world agreed. And we had this thing known as the Constitution, which at the time, at least compared to today's standards, was highly followed. And people went to church on Sunday. And so we were relatively a moral, ethical society. And the world said, yeah, we like the United States. We want to be like the United States. Everyone will accept the US dollar because it's good as gold. And everyone was willing to do that. So, because if you're some third world nation, somebody says, well, I don't know if I trust your money, but the United States, I trust the United States. And so everyone voluntarily agreed to do this. And notice that word voluntarily.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that is no longer here anymore, or at least it's diminishing greatly. So now, in an effort to keep people to use the US dollar, well, let's see here. Our economy is not doing so great. We're $38 trillion in debt. our military hasn't won a war in a long time. Nothing negative to the people that fight in the battles, but the last real, we didn't win Vietnam, we didn't win in Iraq, we didn't win in Afghanistan. We won't talk about Afghanistan, what happened there. And then our money's not backed by gold anymore. So the world is looking around and saying, I don't know if I want to use you. I don't know if I trust you anymore. And this actually has a lot to do with what we'll share in a few moments about what's really going on. And so now we try to coerce other nations into using the US dollar.
Right.
And that's not working. It's just not working. Okay. And India is a prime example. India has traditionally been an ally of the United States, and we're pushing our allies away. So anyhow, so the next thing happened. This just came out yesterday, and I still haven't gotten back to what happened on Monday, but I'll just throw this in. So Trump announced like an embargo or threatening to embargo cooking oil to China. Why is he doing that? Because China is no longer, and if you've been paying attention to our farmers in the West, they are scared at this point because China was the biggest soybean buyer of U.S. farmers' soybeans, and they cut that off 100%. So the farmers right now in the Midwest are bringing in their soybean harvest, and there is no market because China said no to our soybeans. Not only that, China started buying soybeans from Argentina, and then they're going to buy it from Brazil when that harvest comes in. This has outraged some farmers right now because if you haven't been paying attention, our government just gave the Argentine government a $20 billion buyout. And our farmers in the Midwest are saying, you're giving Argentina a buyout, and they just took our soybean market from China, which really wasn't true. We kind of kicked China away from the soybean market. So our farmers in the Midwest are upset. So anyhow, so where does this bring us to? There was a lot of uncertainty in the markets. And then all of a sudden on Monday morning, the tweet came out, everything will be all right. And the stock market went up and everyone's happy again. So
especially one person.
So how hard is it to make soybean oil? Because this sounds like an opportunity for somebody here in the U.S.
Well, we already make cooking oil and all that. Well, I mean, we could make it, but you need to have a customer base.
Yeah, you got to have a
market.
market.
You have a customer base. It doesn't matter what you make; you're not going to sell it.
Oh, so they sell it to China, the oil that we make.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm going to put up a couple posts from Tom. Yeah, we've said all along we need to go back to the gold standard, and if it does, then it'll reevaluate gold like crazy. And what else did he have to say here? Chicken feathers, huh? Okay, make the dollar good again.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Jim.
I know there's a big problem with oil from other countries, according to a lot of car people. They say that the quality of the oil is crap, so that people like it, try to get the higher quality oil because it makes your engines last longer on your vehicles. But they don't want that anymore. They want electric, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm saying, as far as quality of oil, we still have the better quality of oil.
Okay. I'm not sure. Okay. So I was talking about the last thing was about cooking oil, Fred.
Yeah,
no, but you talked about oil before.
Yeah.
I was just trying. I didn't want to interrupt you while you're on your ramble.
Well, here's the thing: for India, it makes perfect sense to buy the oil from Russia. They're neighbors, and that's what they were doing. We didn't want them doing it, and they said, "Well, we're going to keep doing it anyhow." So kind of gave us the big middle finger, and they said, "You know what? And we're not even going to use the U.S. dollar anymore." So we just lost a friend. We're losing that friend. Anyhow,
how many?
Yeah, go on.
I got just quick question. How many? All right, the U.S. dollar tenuously is still the world reserve currency.
Yes.
And we know more and more countries are going away from that. They're trading in their own currencies, whatever they may be. Is India buying Russian oil in rupees, or are they getting rubles?
I think actually they're going to use the Chinese yuan.
So the Chinese
yuan is becoming the new world reserve currency.
But
Okay.
didn't Putin say if you do business with Russia, you had to buy it in rupees, in his money, not in anybody else's money?
That's rubles.
I don't know
yeah.
about that.
Rubles. He said rubles. He said if you're going to do business with Russia, you're going to buy it in rubles.
That maybe it is. In any case, they're not using the U.S. dollar.
Gotcha.
Let me throw out another economic question, and this I know is getting us off track, but is it false then reporting, Jim, that the Chinese economy is pretty much in the toilet as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because you get mixed signals there, and I wouldn't trust the Chinese economic data any more than I trust our own data. You know, all the governments are lying at this point. You know, everyone is hurting in some ways. Some people are doing well in some ways. The one thing that that China has been doing, there's no doubt, Jim, that they took a hit with some of these tariffs because people are buying, in theory, less product from China, at least in the United States. However, if you've been following like the Shanghai Accords and so forth, what China has been doing with India, Vietnam, other countries in their area, they've been setting up a new economic system where they're going to be selling and buying to each other. So China is creating a new marketplace. And I reference this like the United States, say in 1940 or 1930. You know, it was a Great Depression, granted, all that, but we still had, relative to the rest of the world, a huge manufacturing base. We were the top dog in the world. We shifted that production into wartime things like tanks and trucks and airplanes. And if you watch if you look at any of the analysis, like from Japan and Germany back then, they could not believe we could make so much stuff. They couldn't understand it. I mean, we were producing just so many things. They thought it was all propaganda, but in reality, it was real. So I would say China's kind of doing something similar here. One, yes, the United States has been a big marketplace for them, but they've got the manufacturing capacity. They can turn that manufacturing capacity into making products for someone else, maybe even their own citizens, where they don't need us anymore. And so that's what China's doing. They're working out trade agreements with India, which, by the way, India has 1.5 billion people. The United States got 350 million. So if they focus, say China focused on India, they have, in theory, a market 5 times bigger than the United States. If they focus on their own general population, they've got a market, you know, we say they got 1.2 billion, maybe. They've got a market 4 times bigger than the United States.
I said, but except for India makes a lot of their own product, and they don't actually rely on other countries as much as we do, as other countries do. India's kind of got their own thing going on.
So if I was China right now, I'd say, if I just look at myself and India, I've got a market that's 10 times bigger than the United States. Do I need the United States anymore?
If you combine those two economies are probably bigger than most, if not all, the economies in the world. The GDP, and you know, they're just the consumer base alone. I mean, they're the 2 largest populations.
And they know it because the product that they sell to the USA, they can't sell to India because Americans buy more of their stuff than Indians do, than the Indian people, India does. So we are a commerce. They need us to buy their product, or they can't really, well, they're going to do it. They're going to be in the same position we are. They can't sell it. Who's buying their stuff?
Okay, so I'm trying to find something on the web here real fast, but I might not be able to find it, but I'll give the shortened version of it. James, you mentioned like GDP there. There's another term that's out there called purchasing power parity. And what that means is one country might think, well, I'll put it this way, because when I used to relocate with a company, I would look at this. So I was making, say, you know, X amount of dollars in, you know, Greensburg, Pennsylvania. And the company wanted me to move up to Connecticut. Very sizable pay increase. However, my cost of living also went up. You know, so you had to make sure your pay increase went up higher than your living expenses went. Otherwise, you'd lose out. In fact, I have a friend that his company opened a plant in Phoenix, Arizona, and people moved out there, and then they had to realize that they had to give all those workers a huge pay increase because the cost of living was so much higher. So you can look at GDP, but there's also a thing known as purchasing power parity, where if you take into account the income that people make and the expenses that they incur, who's actually better off? Okay. The United States isn't at the top. China and India and other places are actually ahead of us now. And don't quote me on those exact numbers, but I think China is definitely at India, may not be. I didn't plan to discuss that, so I don't have the facts right in front of me. But something for folks to look into, because we oftentimes think we're great here because we make so much money, but our cost of living is so much higher. So anyhow, so China's looking to move stuff elsewhere, and they seem to be far along in that process. And something may give them a huge amount of purchasing power in the not too so distant future. Economy here. I'll run through some economy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we'll get into the big thing of what's really going on underneath the surface.
Okay.
Based on what your friend Tom, or our friend Tom Eddy just said, I think you'll enjoy it.
Was that about the manufacturing there?
It was about bringing power back to the U.S. dollar.
Back. Yeah, bring
Sam
manufacturing.
Walton's philosophy. Sam
Well,
Walton
it was
said-
actually the one before that about the buying power in there. I didn't see the second half of that. Yes, to bring buying power back. We need to restore power to our currency, and that's what's really. I'll talk about it in a moment. So anyhow,
Okay,
in post 10, I'm sorry, what's that?
Go ahead.
On post 10.9, if you didn't catch it, private payrolls. This is from ADP, which is a public service type, or not public, private service. They reported jobs declined by 32,000. So remember earlier we were talking about how the job growth was going down. Now we're in the negative. So we are now, even by their own statistics, in a sense, we are now losing jobs in this country. So the economy is definitely slowing. It's getting harder to cover up. We would say that we've already known that, but now it's becoming very difficult to look the other way.
Do you think AI is having an impact on that yet?
The Democrats have a bill saying that we need to do something because 100 million Americans are going to lose their jobs due to AI. You might not like the Democrats, and I don't know if that number is accurate. 100 million seems high to me. However, we are going to lose a lot of jobs, absolutely, to AI. If you're and mentioned this, I remember having conversations about 2-3 years ago, maybe 2 years. The biggest threat to AI, or the biggest threat is to people. The biggest threat of AI to people are people that are paid for their brains, because AI can think better. That is a very kind of a difficult concept, but you see now AI is doing all kinds of things. What is it? Bulgaria now has, I think, NAFTA. Yes, Mike, NAFTA. Actually, you could even go back to the 70s when we started shifting our textile industry out of this country and into, like, say, Vietnam or China, for example. Nike, the CEO of Nike once said, "We're a Chinese company," because they've been making shoes in China since like 1980. But everyone thinks of Nike as an American company, but their own CEO thinks of them as a Chinese company. So it actually started, one could even go back with Japan, taking the steel industry back in the 70s. I grew up in the Pittsburgh area in the 70s. I remember the factories closing. So yeah, but NAFTA was probably, Mike, you are correct. NAFTA, we don't have to. And with Ross Perot, that sucking sound you hear are jobs going south of the border. So that was probably the real wake-up call, or should have been the wake-up call for us, that, that was, we should have stopped it there. And it was a bipartisan agreement. Remember, whenever it's bipartisan, the American people are getting screwed. I'll just say. You had the Republican. I think the Republicans were in charge of Congress at that point. You had Bill Clinton as the president, and they all signed off on it.
Yeah.
The Uniparty was alive and well 30 years ago.
I've been saying it for years. AI is going to be the death of man. Y'all can keep not believing me, but that's what's going to happen. AI is going to take over everything, and the devil's plan. That's his plan.
Fred, we knew that from if absolutely, you're absolutely right, and it's right in front of our face. The Stargate AI announcement back in January said it all. $500 billion investment. You had Peter Thiel there. Anyhow, off topic. But AI, yeah, some of the jobs is AI loss. The other thing is that, all the reports are, if you're looking at delinquencies on car loans, house loans, whatever kind of loan, the American consumer is tapped out. They're out of money. Remember back in COVID, we printed, $7 trillion. A lot of that money, all those stimmy checks, a lot of people spent it, but a lot of people also saved that money. But in the last couple of years, they've been drawing down their savings accounts using that money, which is an interesting thing. Was that by design to continue the illusion? Never let a good crisis go to waste. So they printed a bunch of money, gave it to people, that stuffed the savings accounts. Then as the economy goes down, people pull in the savings, but everyone still thinks everything is normal. But now we're at the point where the savings accounts are empty. People are starting to lose their jobs. People can't afford to live because of inflation. And inflation is not coming down. It keeps going up. And so people are at the breaking point at this point. And
I'm gonna before the podcast ends, Jim, I want you to address this comment that Christy made here about it seems to be no stopping it now. It's like a runaway train that's just headed for the station that's going to crash. So keep that in the back of your mind and address that before 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock.
Okay, so I'm going to go through this economics part really fast. Then we'll get into the meat of the stories because I think that's going to address was Christy's question. Yeah, because the question is this it? That was the whole theme of this whole podcast. Is this it? So let me just go through a couple of things real fast here. So that job report of negative numbers, that was something that the people are having trouble ignoring at this point. The writing is on the wall, so to speak. It's a tough market out there. Post 10.5. It's a tough market. Fewer people are quitting, and businesses are hiring workers at the slowest pace since the pandemic. And at this point, as we know, they're just laying off. The trucking industry is flashing warning signs. And the trucking industry is a great barometer of the economy because everything moves by trucks. So if the trucking industry is slowing, that tells you the economy is slowing. Let's see, mortgage rates or mortgage loans are stalling. People can't afford to buy a house. I look around town here in Brantford. I'm seeing more and more for sale signs that I have not seen in years at this point. So I think, in fact, I just heard about a person. I said, "Oh, that house went up for sale," and a neighbor of that person said, "Yeah, they just lost their job, so that house is now up for sale in Brantford." I just heard of a plant here in Brantford that is laying off people in, one might say, a little bit of a nefarious way. They seem to be targeting the older folks right before pensions. I don't know if that's, I shouldn't have probably said that. Sorry. But different things like that. So we just need to keep things in perspective, that things are tough out there. So, and if you look at the stock market, Deutsche Bank, they put out a thing. The AI bubble is the only thing keeping the U.S. economy together. In the article, they talk about the S&P 500. They say this rally in the S&P 500. If you notice, stocks hit all-time highs almost every day. Have you noticed that? Even though we're getting all this horrible economic news, the stock market keeps hitting all-time highs. Yeah. Well, how is that possible? Well, we talked about the printing of money goes to the rich first. They buy assets and so forth. But anyhow, the entire rally is all based on the Mag 7. That's your Microsoft. That's your Apple. That's your Google. That sort of thing. The other 493 stocks in the S&P 500, their earnings are all down. They're all moving into contraction. They're all moving into recession. They're all saying lower expectations. And what they said is, if those 7 stocks start to flip, you're going to see the stock market crash faster than you've ever seen. So folks that have their 401ks in stocks, you might really want to pray about this and think about this. and we'll share something in just a moment. And let's just bring up like First Brands, for example. They were an auto distributor, like parts distributor. They had AAA credit. AAA, the highest you can get. They filed for bankruptcy overnight, and billions of dollars simply vanished. This has a lot. This is ringing a lot of bells from 2008, 2009. Remember the mortgage bonds when they were all rated AAA, and almost overnight it collapsed. So people are saying, wait a second, this isn't looking as sound as it should be. In fact, along that chaos of it exposed what they said, the $1.5 trillion credit market meltdown. Now, will they print some money and prop it up again? Who knows, Jim? I don't know. But we know at some point they can't keep printing the money. Are we there? Is it? So on Wall Street now, for the first time last week, I was catching articles, but I've never seen this word in any article before. And I tend to follow CNBC pretty closely. You know that, which, by the way, they are moderate. They lean, maybe, if anything, they're on the left side of moderate, but they're still moderate. For those that think I'm a leftist and a commie, I'm not. Well, I've been called that.
All right.
Because I don't always agree with Trump. I've been called a leftist. So anyhow, on the articles, this word debasement trade, actually it's a phrase, debasement trade, has been showing up. And an article, quoting from the article, this is post 11-37 for those that wish to see it. The debasement trade is a bet that government borrowing and money printing will erode the value of the US dollar. So investors are shifting cash into assets like gold, crypto, stocks, and real estate that can hold their value. The question here is, what will hold their value longer term? Who just did that?
I did. I was wondering what that was. It has something to do with it?
Well, okay, so we're going to get there. Hold that thought so this has all been the appetizer. We'll get to the main encore in a moment, or the entree in a moment here.
This is what you were talking about there.
Yeah, debasement trade.
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily hypothecation, but it's debasement trade. So people are wondering what's going on. I'm going to skip, Jim. I'm going to skip the mark of the beast. I'm going to get to the next section here.
Okay.
Because I want to
follow you.
I want to keep going with that. And for those who don't know, I'll just say this about the mark of the beast. It's alive and well. The digital ID is spreading everywhere. If you listen to the Prime Minister, Starmer, I forget what his first name, over in the UK, this was really, actually, I had a really good discussion because I know a person that's from Scotland over there.
Me too.
He made a public broadcast the other day and saying that, we need to get these illegal immigrants under control. So everyone will be required to have a digital ID so that we know who you are. And if you don't, and he goes, and let me be clear, if you do not have your digital ID, you will not be able to work.
I saw that.
Problem, reaction, solution. So I would say this is going to come everywhere. And just watch the people that are pushing the cryptos and the Genius Act and the Stargate AI. Oh, wait a second. That would be Congress and the White House. So anyhow, somebody mentioned, is this unstoppable? This whole tokenization, Robinhood CEO, you probably heard of Robinhood Trading. He says it is an unstoppable freight train. And we could go through more of that. But anyhow, lots of tokenization, lots of CBD stuff called underneath other names are all taking place. If you're flying to Europe, you're going to have to do fingerprints and all this other stuff. And you can read a whole lot more about the rollout of the digital ID. It's happening in the United States as well, just underneath different names and in different ways, but it's taking place and they are all in on it.
Yeah. I want to make a comment. I want to make a comment here because there's a lot of good comments coming across the Facebook from Facebook. No, I mean, there's some that are too long to put up, and I don't want to delay, the material you want to go through. But I just want to encourage everybody that's watching us, if you're not watching us on Facebook, make sure you go back and check the Two Guys Drinking Coffee Facebook page, because that's where most of these comments are coming from. There's a lot of really good comments on there that I think is important for people to go see and look at and read when they get a moment. But go ahead, Jim, continue on.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to share a few. Okay.
No. I just wanted to point that out so people will go back to them at a later time.
Okay. So pulling this all together before we go to this next section. So the US dollar has lost 10% of its value this year. The deficit is going through the roof. Our government actually isn't even functioning right now, which might be a blessing, but that doesn't instill confidence in the world reserve currency when the government of that currency can't even agree to run the government. Okay. Remember, our currency is based on the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. We're $38 trillion in debt. We can't pay our bills, so our credit's shot. And now our government isn't even functioning, so faith in that government is shot. And we could expand. So also on Friday, in addition to these rare earth things, something else manifested its head in a very big way for those that were paying attention. It's been going on for a while. So we talk about currency, going back to Tom, bring purchasing power back, bring back a strong currency. People need purchasing power. The US dollar is not giving it. What we have seen this year, stocks every single day make a new high. Typically speaking, up 0.1%, 0.2%, very small, but they make new highs. The media is focused on the new highs of the stock market. What has been happening underneath the water is that biblical, constitutional, historical, ethical, economical, and financial money has been skyrocketing. And that, for those who haven't figured it out already, is gold and silver. Silver, for example, started the year at about $28. It's now over $52. That is not making the headlines. Okay. Silver goes up 4% in a day. You don't hear about that, but you do hear about the stock market that went up 0.1%. So people are moving, are abandoning. The reports are now that places around the world, like in India, for example, not a sliver of silver to be found came out. That was a headline over there. The Perth Mint in Australia has halted sales because they don't have any. The big one is in London, the London Bullion Metals Exchange. That's a big clearinghouse for, 100 years. The place where the world goes to get their silver and setting the price and so on and so forth. We reported early on back in January and February that there was a drawdown. It appears that has, let's put it this way, it appears the warehouses are empty or very close to empty at this point. So in the past, we'll go this way. Jim, we've talked about this. You've even pulled it up. The COMEX, better known as the CRIMEX. I think most people have figured out what I meant by that. Has been known to sell silver, gold, and probably a lot of other stuff too, but we'll focus on those two at this point. And it deals with that rehypothecation, Jim, that you just put up there. Have been known to sell 1 ounce of silver, or I would put it this way, have been known to sell upwards of 500 ounces of silver for every one that actually does exist. So they will sell a silver contract that includes 5,000 ounces of silver. And, they have 1% of that actually in the warehouse. As long as nobody takes possession, the scam goes on. Okay. So I can go, Fred, I'll sell you this contract that says I've sold you 5,000 ounces of silver.
I would never buy it.
But I'll do it for $20. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But, well, You just don't want the paper. There are storage vaults out there, and I reference that. If you have money in the bank, then you should probably have some silver in a vault someplace. Okay.
Yeah, one where you can put it in there and lock it yourself, lock it into a bank vault. They have those.
Maybe not, Fred. You can put yourself at risk if you do that.
Or a safe in your house.
That you can put yourself at risk if you do that. You may wish to have it stored off-site someplace. You do what you want to do.
But can't that
Off-site
be
is a
robbed
wonderful
too?
option. Let's just put it that way.
Can that be robbed off site too?
What's this?
Can that be robbed off site too?
It can be robbed anywhere. The banks can rob your money too. The stock market can rob your 401k.
I 100% agree.
Whoa, what's going on, James?
that
So anyhow,
that was weird. I
you
was
do-
trying to show a JM Bullion screen.
Okay. You do what you want. Like there are places like onegold.com, there's Money Metals. I just pulled an IRA that my Celine used to have that was in a TIAA CREF fund because they will not let you invest in gold and silver. I pulled that over into an IRA that is now in Utah and is doing very well, I might add. So anyhow, you do what you want to do.
Right. I'm
Okay.
saying everything's a
So,
risk.
but-
is what I'm
but-
telling you.
Here's the bottom line in terms of what is happening. So we know the Crimex can sell up to 500 ounces of silver for every ounce they actually have. I sell Fred 5,000 ounces. I'll say I sell John because Fred's smart enough not to do this. Although if you're going to trade it, you can make a lot of money on the trading game. However, the trading game works until people start asking for it. Until people like Fred that says, I want it in my own possession. I want to hold it with my own hands.
Right.
That appears to be happening. That people are starting to ask. Now, to discourage people from asking for their silver, Fred, going back to that contract I tried to sell you, let's say, for example, to try to explain this to people, I sell Fred a contract and the price was $50. Okay. I sold him 5,000 ounces that I don't have, but he agreed to buy it. And he says, I'll take possession of that in December. December comes around and Fred says, I'm thinking about taking my silver. It was, I bought it for $50. It's now $55. I think I'd like to take possession of it now. Well, I'm like, well, wait a second. I don't have it. Fred wants, the price is now 55. He wants his silver. I don't have it. What do? I go to Jim and to 100 other people, and I sell each of them 5,000 ounces of silver. I throw it all on the market at the same time. It pummels the price down to not 55, not the 50 that Fred bought it, but now the price drops to $45. Fred says, wait a second, if I actually take possession now, I'm going to lose money because the price is only $45 now. No, I won't take possession. I'll roll the contract over to next February or something. I won't take possession of it. This is the game that has gone on for a decade plus, probably 3 or 4 decades even. They will drop, and if you watch the markets, you can watch the COMEX price at midnight. That's when they love to drop a bunch of contracts onto the market, and it drops the price $1. Because we all know the best time to get the best price for your product is in the middle of the night when everyone's asleep. That's a sarcastic statement. If I want to sell something, I'm going to go down to, say, Bradford Main Street and try to sell it at 2:00 in the afternoon when there's people on the street. I'm not going to try to sell it at 2:00 in the morning. But that's exactly what they do. They sell these contracts at 2 in the morning, pummel the price, and then people look and say silver's, silver's down for the day. They've done this for years. The best known example of it was the day they announced Osama bin Laden was captured and his body was immediately put into the sea so that no one could do an autopsy on it. You take that for whatever it's worth. But on that day at 6 p.m. on a Sunday evening, it was May 1st, I think, the silver price dropped like $5. It killed the market for years. They threw a ton of paper contracts on it. It killed it. They've done this for the last 10 or 15 years. As soon as silver would start to get a little run up, they would dump a bunch of paper contracts on it, pummel the price, kills the market for days, weeks, months, even years. On Friday, the same day those rare earth minerals were happening, those tweets going back and forth, they dropped 130% of global annual production onto the market in a sell order. First off, how do you drop 130% of global production onto a market in one day?
Is this all on paper, Jim?
It's all on paper.
All right.
Here's the difference.
How did they keep
On
that?
Friday, the price didn't drop. The price didn't go down. The price stayed the same. The paper game, it would appear, is over. What appears is happening is that the people that have these paper contracts now want delivery. They want it in their hands. And the bullion banks don't have it.
Exactly.
And so the bullion banks have to go out and try to find it, to give it to Fred or somebody John, who bought the contract. Now, this is showing up in two different ways. You mentioned rehypothecation. So we have rehypothecation, James, in terms of selling 500 ounces for every ounce you actually have, because 500 people think they actually own that 1 ounce of silver. Okay, so that's rehypothecation there. The second thing is, if I'm desperate, and I'm going to say, I'm just going to use us three here to keep it simple. I sold Fred some contracts, and Fred says, James, I want my silver now. I'm like, okay, I don't have it, but I know James has some silver. I go, James, I know you have, and we'll keep these numbers simple. We'll say it's 10 ounces. I go, James, I know you have 10 ounces. James is like, okay, yeah, okay, I got that. I go, can I borrow that from you? Can I lease it from you? This goes on. You can lease somebody's silver. Okay. Historically speaking, the lease rate, like if I want to lease James's 10 ounces of silver, it might cost me 0.5% for a month. Okay. On Friday, the lease rates went to 40%. Nobody wanted to lease their silver because nobody thinks they're going to get it back. Okay, you see what's starting to happen? So these bullion banks or whoever they are, they can't lease it because people like Jim don't want to lend it because they're not sure they're ever going to get it back. So the bullion banks now have to go into the open marketplace and try to find it. They have to try to buy it. Somebody has to try to sell it, or somebody has to be willing to sell it. So we're seeing this very rapid rise in silver prices because it would appear that the people that have to pay up on these contracts are having to go into the marketplace and actually buy it. So, for example, on Monday, notice it's interesting too. There was a tweet that came out from the executive branch about everything will be all right, referencing at the surface level, maybe the whole tariffs and rare earth things. But and the stock market rebounded very nicely. And if we have time, we'll talk about that trade, but another trade that was talked about off here. But anyhow, what happened on Monday, silver went up over 7%. So it appears that this game is coming to an end. Is it? I don't know. Is everything going to be all right? I don't know. Maybe it will be. Maybe they'll find some way to cover it all up. But at least at this point, it looks like there's a big problem. It would appear, and as background knowledge as well, from the year 2020 to today, every year the world has been running a deficit. In other words, we've been consuming more silver than that's been produced, actual production. So it would appear that for the last 5 years, we've been backing the truck up to the warehouse, the storage areas, and pulling out of storage what we need to meet demand.
Mm-hmm.
Have we gotten to the point where the warehouses are empty? I don't know. Is this it? I don't know. We do know that Vladimir Putin, back in January, announced that for his sovereign fund for his country, in addition to the gold they've been stockpiling, they would now start to stockpile silver. Has Vladimir emptied the warehouses? I don't know. Interesting thing there. Because it's also interesting now because were we not supposed to have a truce and a peace deal in 24 hours? But last week it was also announced no truce, no peace for Ukraine, but rather we're going to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine to be fired anywhere into Russia, and they can be nuclear tipped. One thing to say, as Gerald Celente would say, when all else fails, they take you to war. Now, in the Middle East, we hear there's a peace deal going on. I don't know. I also read in a book one place, when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction come upon them. I don't know. Is this it? I don't know. I don't think we're at that horrible stage yet, but it does appear that the system is breaking. Let me just see here if there's anything else I needed to. Apparently, right now, we are flying silver bars out of New York City over to London to try to boost up their silver supplies over there. But as one interview I caught it late yesterday night, was saying that the people aren't selling. So yes, they say they have 100 million ounces, but the word on the street is that there might be a 1 million ounces that might be going. The average person simply isn't shipping their silver over to London, even if they're getting a 40% lease rate, which is unbelievable. Just to throw a few other things in here. Oh, this is interesting too with refiners. If you have silver jewelry and you went to cash it in at your pawn shop, that pawn shop might just try to resell the silver piece of jewelry, or they might send it to a refinery to be melted down into a silver bar, with a lot of other silver to make a silver bar. Refineries are rejecting that right now. And this is an interesting reason. There is a shortage on nitric acid. I never really knew anything about this until 72 hours ago. Nitric acid is needed to break down the silver, like in a piece of silver jewelry, so it can be melted into a bar of silver. Mm-hmm. Nitric acid is also used in ammunition. And all the nitric acid is going to ammunition now, or at least not all of it, but a lot of it. So the refinery's we can't process this jewelry right now, so no, please don't send it to us. I just thought that was an interesting piece of trivia there. On other things, who was this? This was the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Of course, they're part of the bankers and all that stuff, but this might be, I would say this is true. They always do give you some truth, even if they're perpetual liars. Every now and then they sprinkle things with a little bit of truth. They go, the International Monetary Fund is warning banks to prepare for dollar shock and have sufficient foreign exchange funds to cover U.S. dollar exposure. It's interesting. They didn't say Chinese yuan exposure. They didn't say Indian ruble exposure. They didn't say Mexican peso exposure. They said U.S. dollar exposure. Is there something happening?
Well,
are we getting close? Yes.
There's been a lot of people speculating on a lot of different issues, meaning the reset of the government, the reset of the currency. Everybody points to a currency crash. I'll put it that way. That's going to have to occur, regardless of what they're looking at. Are they looking at the government? Are they looking at the financial aspect of it? But it all points to this. Eventually the U.S. dollar is just going to, it's just going to crash. It's not going to be any value to it whatsoever. I wanted you to leave us with some kind of solution or some kind of hope, but everything I'm hearing is leading us to, you might as well just wait for the crash to occur because it's right on our doorstep.
Oh, no, Jim, that's such a. I don't think you actually believe that. I surely do not. This is a time to. I'll tell you what. Especially if this is the end times as well. If we're getting pretty close to that, Jim, we said it all the time. Revelation. What is it? Where's your notes here? I don't. Why can't I'm drawing a blank on it? Anyhow, when you begin to see these things come to pass, stand up, look up, for your redemption is near. Absolutely not. You should be more engaged in life than ever before. Could you imagine walking around the countryside with Jesus Christ in the first century? How amazing that would be. Of course, it was kind of depressing when he was being nailed to the cross, but there was some incredible joy a few days later. No, people should not be depressed by any of this. There's an interesting thing. This is about economics. So let's put it this way, and I'll leave people with some potential hope here. And then I want to say something else, because I don't want people to drop their guard, because I think that's what we're doing. We've dropped our guard. More millionaires, and I'm not sure if this statistic is true anymore, because now you can make $192 million in 2 hours on a trade on a Monday afternoon, which we didn't even get into for our folks. That was an off-air discussion. More millionaires were made during the Great Depression than any other time in this country's history. Now, I don't know if that's technically true now, because we're in a totally different era, but say 20, 30 years ago, I think it was. Some people saw things coming. Some people positioned themselves
and bought it all up
to weather the storm better. If you see a hurricane coming, you either try to get out of the way, or you try to, you board up your house, you do things like that. Joseph, he saw a famine coming, so he planted a garden bigger and stored up food for 7 years. Noah saw a flood coming. He built an ark. Okay. So that's what people should do. However, most people, I think today, like to be a victim. Oh, woe is me. Or the government will take care of me if there's a problem. I'm not that mentality. My strategy is, one, be close to God. That's the first thing, because no matter what happens, if you're close to him, you'll be a winner. Maybe not always in the short run, but at least in the long run, for sure. The second thing is, people need to build a community. I've gotten together with a group of friends. We sit on her porch, and we have just a wonderful time talking. And people walk down the road, and we talk with their neighbors and stuff like that. And we're getting to know people. Sit on your front porch and get to know your neighbors. Republicans and Democrats, start talking together and find things in common, because you probably have a lot more in common than you don't. And if you're calling each other evil, just stop it. Or if you're going to say those evil Democrats or those evil Republicans, be sure to call out your side too. Otherwise, just stop it, because you're part of the problem. You're causing the division. You're part of the problem. Stop it. Start sitting down and talking with people and build community. Because if you ever saw that movie Bugs, or Ants, it was, the grasshoppers are up here, and they said if those ants down there ever got together, they would take us over. So the grasshoppers up here keep stirring the pot, keep getting us to fight each other, when in fact we should be looking, and our focus should be attention on them, not on each other. So sit down with your neighbors, even if they're Democrats or Republicans or Green Party, and start talking to one another. So that's a big thing there. The next one is, buy some food, start a garden, create a community garden. You got an empty lot on your property, your neighbor has a bigger yard that they're not using. Get together and plant a garden together. Spend some time together with each other as you till the fields and put some seeds in the ground. And then have a Thanksgiving meal together at the end of the season, like the Pilgrims did with the Native Americans. Okay, so there's that. If you're looking at finances, folks, I'll say it. I'll go by what Greg Manarino said. Well, first off, we know this whole thing is propped up. And this is not financial advice. None of that. You make your own decisions completely. We know this whole thing is propped up. We talked about this so many times. Our good buddy, my good buddy, I'm not sure how other people think of him. I like him. I think Greg has a lot of good words. It's interesting. He did do a video. He said, the storm is here. It's time to hunker down. Is this it? I guess we'll find out soon enough. I think things are definitely, they've been kicked into a higher notch and are accelerating more. So this is what his belief is in terms of what will happen. He believes that the Dow, which is now 46,000, and 1 ounce of gold, which is now 4,000, the value are going to equal at some point. Now that could mean gold goes to 46,000, the Dow stays at 46. It could mean that gold stays at 4,000 and the Dow drops to 4,000. His belief is it's going to be 8,000. Gold is going to go to 8,000. The stock market is going to drop to 8,000. If you have your retirement funds in the stock market, I would suggest, or actually, no matter where you have your money, I would suggest you go to the Lord and you ask him for discernment. You pray about this, because if you're planning on retiring and your retirement fund drops 80%, 90%, and you had $100,000 in it, for example, and you now have 10,000, you're not going to be a happy camper. You're going to be very upset. It would appear that they're going to pump the stock market for a little bit longer. So you might have some time to make adjustments. If you do have funds, I transferred that IRA I mentioned. It's in a secured vault in Utah. I transferred that over. I bought the silver at 37 in July. That silver is now 52. I'm a happy camper. I did well with that. Greg's analysis, in addition to the Dow dropping to 8,000 as a best bet, we don't know, and gold going to 8,000, is that silver will return to its historical relationship with gold, which is 10-1, which means 800, which means that the Dow drops to 8,000, gold goes to 8,000, and silver goes to 800. That is his best analysis based on things that are happening.
And now silver is still selling at around 55 to $60 for an ounce, depending on
historically. So these are all projections. So let's just take a little into historic. During crisis like this, say like the Weimar Germany or the Zimbabwean or whenever things like this currencies blow up, there seems to be a pattern that that in addition to the stock market dropping, house prices drop, gold, silver go up, all kinds of things take place.
Okay.
There is precedent, historically speaking, that 100 or even as low as 50, I guess it depends on what exactly you want. So I'll say between 50 and 100 ounces of silver will buy you a house. There's a report that in Weimar, Germany, in Berlin, that 1 ounce of gold bought you 4 square blocks of Berlin. But no one knew what to do with 4 square blocks of Berlin.
Yeah.
Because if you buy a building, you have to pay taxes on that building. You have to, do all these other things. It's like I was talking with a person that a church up in Buffalo, and so there's other churches that might be for sale around the country because congregations are dropping. Those churches you might be able to pick up really cheap. A church that might be valued at $10 million, you might be able to pick up for 100,000. But the problem is if that goes from nonprofit to profit, you now have to pay the real estate taxes, and the real estate taxes might be $100,000 a year. So the question is, yes, you might be able to buy stuff really cheap, but can you actually afford it longer term? Can you do something with it? So when you look at these things, you got to factor all that into.
Yeah.
Okay. I've said, I think, everything I needed to say.
I'm actually running out of time and I got some stuff to do, but I wanted to throw one thing in there before I go, and I'll let you guys continue. But the one principle that everybody's forgetting about, and it's what Jesus said to the Pharisees: a kingdom divided against itself shall not stand. And that's our problem. Our problem is bigger than what the gold value is, bigger than what money we're making and what the stock market says. We are too divided as a nation. And that's the reason why we're going to fall, because it's written.
Okay.
Fred, I'd up that one thing. I know exactly what you're saying. I don't know, maybe you implied this as well, but I think it starts with our dividedness between us and God himself.
Yeah.
People need to
Because
start
every
getting back
city,
to the
every
church,
house
getting back
divided
to God.
against itself. Every city, every house divided against itself will fall.
Okay.
Well,
Let
I'll
me
tell
say
you what.
Can I say
Yeah,
one
go
last
ahead.
thing,
Go
James?
ahead. Sure. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thanks. You're being so kind to me. So I think this reset, we've all heard there's a reset coming. Is it the Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum reset, or is the Donald Trump white hats QAnon reset? What's happening? I think the best analysis I can say right now is looking at what's been done. If we're hoping for a technocratic reset, where the technocrats get in power, there's going to be a set of things happening that would point in that direction. If we're going back to a constitutional republic, then there should be actions taking place that lead us back to that way. So people, I think, take a look at what we're seeing. Take a look at executive orders. Take a look at bills passed by Congress. Take a look at those things. Are we moving towards cryptocurrencies and digital IDs? Or are we moving back to constitutional money? Are we moving back to restoring the republic to what it's supposed to be? Do your own research, make your own, draw your own conclusions, that sort of thing. Where do you see, based on what has happened, say in the last 10 months, which direction are we heading in? That's for everyone to decide for themselves.
Okay. Hey, well, Jim, I appreciate it. It is almost 20 after 10. We've gone over quite a bit, but there's a plethora of information to go through. I want to thank you for being on this week as you do, and we look forward to the next time you're on. There was a couple comments on there about bringing you back more often. But in any case, thank you for sharing all this information. And it is true. We all have to live with our own decisions, and information like this helps us to make those decisions. But in the end, it's only, we're the ones that are going to have to make those decisions. So let me leave it at that. Fred, I'm going to ask you before you duck out of here to pray us out of here, if you will.
Okay. Thank you, Lord, for this day and for all the information we got here. And I know truly there's nothing. I mean, we know what man says, but we always got to follow what you say. And the bottom line is, if we can't get our lives in according to what the word says, we're doomed anyway. I mean, right now, my piece is that finding that my relationship with God is solid, and that's all I care about. So if they drop a nuke on us and we all die tomorrow, at least I'm I got peace with God, and that's what I'm looking at. So Lord, I ask, Lord, you would open the eyes of every American and every person listening today, Lord, that they would take this more serious than what we've been doing. Some of us are just happy with a little comfort. Some of us don't even have peace in knowing you. But I pray, Lord, that you would open the eyes of every man and every person listening today, Lord, that we would seek your face and want to serve you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Fred. Hey, everybody. Appreciate you staying on with us. If you stayed for the whole duration, I know we had a couple people that had to drop off. Tom has to leave early or at 10 o'clock every Wednesday. So we appreciate everybody being on, and we will see you next week. We got some guests coming up in the queue. Don't have anything solid yet to tell you about, but stay posted. I'll let you know. And now, wherever you are, it's supposed to be a nice day here in Bradford, but wherever you are, we hope you have a wonderful day and be blessed.